who wants to get into campaign structures? Who thinks their ad account is in perfect condition right now? Doesn't matter what you're making. Who thinks your ad account is structured and set up properly? Cool. Let's add some more people to the ad breakout session, Caitlin, if you're in here. So the phases of advertising, credit where credit is due. I try to be an honest and transparent man. I did not invent this. I'm not the inventor of this. No media buyer on our team is the inventor of this. We actually learned this from probably one of the best media buyers alive today, and his name is Ashton Shanks. Those of you that don't know him, he started out as an employee for Traffic and Funnels. Now he's a CEO of Traffic and Funnels. He started his own company. But we actually worked directly with Ashton. He taught us this framework and helped us implement this in our business last summer. And that's really when our ads started to propel going forward. So we've since then modified this. This has some deviations away from the way he does it, because we understand most clients that we work with are typically starting at $0 or less than $1,000 a month in advertising. So you don't have a lot of data to work off of. So you have to create a little bit of deviation here, okay? So phase one is you're establishing a baseline. We all said and agreed on that data is the number one most important thing in your business. That's how you make decisions. So if you do not have a baseline, how do you make decisions going forward? How do you know what's working and what's not, right? That's like saying you're trying to replicate your grandma's recipe, but you never tried her recipe. How are you going to know if it was good or bad? How are you going to know if you want to replicate her recipe, right? If you don't have that baseline, everything else going forward, you don't have the data you need to make informed decisions of, is this better or worse, okay? In this establishing a baseline, there's two primary things we want to achieve. Message market match. We want to match the offer, the message, the hooks, the angles, the creative, etc. We want to match that to the audience. And we're going to get informed in this campaign to make sure we're using the appropriate messaging, okay? We're also going to validate our offer. I would say most of you probably have to do some offer reconstruction. And the reason I can say that is because 100% of the businesses we work with, even insurance agents, they come into our business, they come to work with us, every single one of them have had to do some deviation on their offer to scale successfully with paid advertising, okay? So you want to validate that offer. From there, once you have those two things locked in, then you're going to go into phase two, and this is going to be where things start getting fun, right? You start collecting a lot of data. Like we said, always be testing. The second phase is audience testing. This is where you're going to test the different people that you are going to display your ads to find the highest performing audiences and the top performers that you can scale with, okay? How many people have YouTubed how to scale YouTube or Facebook ads? Don't be shy, I've done it. That's it. Nobody else has searched that. That's interesting. Well, we'll talk about it so you don't have to search it. But with that in mind, from there, you're also going to revalidate your offer. Have you ever done something, you succeeded from it, and thought to yourself, man, I'm a genius. I just knew right out the gate. No, most of us are sitting there thinking, damn, I got lucky. How did I get so lucky? Phase two will also help you revalidate that offer so you know that the offer that you're going to, in the foreseeable future, invest $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month in advertising into is going to be an offer that's going to produce a return on investment. And not a return on investment in 12 months, a return on investment in less than 30 days. That's the objective of what we want to achieve, right? That's direct response marketing. Phase three, creative testing. Now, this is broken up into two phases because anytime you get into creative, there's a million and one things that you can test, right? Realistically, we break it down into 5. The first one that we want to break down and test is your media. Does video perform better than images? Does this image versus this image perform better? Does this video versus this video perform better? Do carousels work better, right? You want to test that first because the image, the video, the carousel is the first thing that people are going to look at when they're scrolling down their newsfeed, okay? So that's the first thing you want to test. That's the biggest lever you can pull when it comes to testing your creative. The next is going to be your copy, and this is going to be your angles. Who knows what an angle is? We just listened to Justin's speech. Come on, guys. Damn. Angles are essentially, are you throwing rocks at competitors, or are you introducing a new idea, right? That you're going to take a stance, an angle on something, and then you're going to leverage that throughout the rest of your copy to get people engaged, okay? Angles, the hooks you use to grab the attention, the headlines you use in the copy. You can test descriptions as well. Phase 4 is ultimately, if you've done steps 1 through 3 and you've executed them, now you have a campaign that you should be getting $1 in and $3 or more out, and you can scale that puppy up. Okay, so let's break each one of these down with a couple rules. Rule number 1, if you have no historic data in your ad account, say you've never run ads before, or you set up Business Manager and you got scared, and they wouldn't let you run ads because you forgot to enter a payment method, and you didn't know why. You didn't know you had to enter a payment method. Ads are free. That's what my friend told me. Start with lookalike audiences and relevant interests, the closest related interests that you can find, okay? You are going to run that to validate your offer and get message market match. If you have historic data, then you can leverage the existing audience. There's a caveat to that, which you can see down at the bottom. If you can see that, you have perfect vision. If you can't, I'll read it for you. Historic data ultimately implies that you had some successful performance with that audience. If no successful performance has been indicated, treat it as rule number 1. Okay? Treat it as if you're starting fresh. Rule number 3, aim for macro audiences. This is essentially, at this phase, you want to try to encapsulate as many people as possible. We're not going for perfection. We're not going for the highest quality lead that came from grandma that's got $5,000 she's looking to burn. You're going to find people that are going to resonate with your message. You're not trying to get a sale. You're not trying to get an appointment. You're trying to get people that resonate with your message at this point, okay? So you're going to aim for the biggest audience that you can get. I would much rather throw something into an audience of 500,000 people than 100 people. I have a higher chance of succeeding, right? Rule number 4, don't over or under budget. If you're in a local or regional market, you should aim to spend at minimum $500 a month. And that is literally the bottom line. If you have less than that to invest in your advertising, then you probably need to go back and do some prospecting, some local networking, things like that. Or get a credit card. With that in mind, the next limit of that is about $2,000 a month. You don't want to go over that. At this point, you don't have a predictable ROI on your campaign. You're going to waste money if you spend more than that throughout this phase. If you're on a national or international level, so we at Conversionly are on an international level. We work with clients from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada, Mexico. We even have a client in Colombia, as interesting as it is. You're going to want to look to aim to spend $2,000 to $5,000 a month. That's typically because you have to go at bigger audiences, you have a wider net to cast, and you need the budget to facilitate that environment. Excuse me if you heard my burp, I am 100% sorry. No, I'm not. Rule number 5, MVP, minimum viable product. This is essentially saying you want to use the bare minimum that you need necessary to measure validation against your KPI. Now, what I mean by this is you don't need to go build out this Russell Brunson funnel, one funnel away. No, you don't have to have anything perfect. You don't have to have the best images, the best graphics. Go get photo shoots by these awesome videographers. Let's give a hand up for the videographers here. Yeah. And the photographers, they're killing it. Y'all the real MVPs. And you'll see it in our ads in about a month. Anyways, you do not have to have all that production for your testing. You want to use the minimum amount that you need to measure whether or not you have something that's working. Because from this point forward, if you don't have something that's working with the minimum viable, it doesn't matter how good you make it. Like I said, a bad offer executed perfectly will always perform poorly, okay? Whereas a good offer executed poorly will still perform. The minimum viable product, okay? Phase 1. Typically what you're going to see in that is a lead gen campaign. It's the opt-in form, the lowest quality leads you can get, right? But it'll perform. Ask Mr. Matt Treese here. Matt, You ran your ads working with us. You started with a lead gen form. Where did your business start when you started running those ads? $20,000 a month, and how much are you doing now? Perfect. Not with today's conversion rate, but realistically. So what he said, for those of you that didn't hear, when he started running with us, he started on lead gen forms. He was making $20,000 a month. He's on track to do $120,000 a month now. He's been with us 6 months, 7 months. Sorry, I did not plan to use you as a testimonial, just to indicate minimum viable product can scale, and it can scale effectively if you execute it well. Phase 1 is going to be the most difficult for businesses to exit this phase. And the reason being is because you're testing an audience, an offer, creative, hooks, all this stuff all at once, and you don't know if any of it's working. Ultimately, what you want to do here is try to get within KPI for your cost per lead and validate that there is interest within the market for what it is that you're selling. If you cannot validate that, then you never exit phase 1. It becomes a loop, right? You're taking a feedback loop and iterating accordingly. When you have validated that, and you are collecting leads, printing leads, essentially, then you go into phase 2. It's where we start audience testing. So audience testing, you're essentially taking the controls from phase 1. Who knows what a control is? Okay, a couple people. So in the world of testing, a control is something that has the data that you can measure against. So your control is the ad and the audience that you launched in phase 1 that has data that you know performs, and then everything you test against in the future is testing against that control because you have data, you have intelligence. Now you can tell everything for audience testing going forward, better or worse, right? It's a simple better or worse. It's like that one drinking game, high-low, right? Same thing, right? Your winning combinations of that audience and ad become your control, and all audience testing will be against the controls going forward. Your creatives, your audiences, scaling, etc. You always have a control. Rule number 2, create multiple variants of each audience. I'll show you exactly what I mean by this in a little bit. But essentially, you're creating subsets of an audience. And if we're looking at this, so we were running an ad campaign when we first started implementing this, and we were testing a bunch of different interest-based targeting. Frank Kern, Russell Brunson, lead generation, agencies. These are all major high-level interests that we were targeting. So we broke those out into each individual ad set on their own. And then what we mean by creating subsets is we take Frank Kern, and we're only placing those ads in feeds, and then Frank Kern only showing it to males, Frank Kern, and then showing it to Facebook business page admins, so stacking the interest, Frank Kern using one-click optimization. You're testing subsets to see, is there a better micro-segment of that interest audience that's going to perform, okay? And you break this out. Typically in this range, depending on your budget, you should have anywhere from 20 to 40 different ad sets that you're testing, okay? Your budget. Spend appropriately. You're not trying to exit learning. Who's seen the exit learning in Facebook? No one's seen exit learning? Matt has. Thanks, Matt. You guys are real MVPs. No, so learning is essentially your optimizations with Facebook. Facebook's essentially telling you, hey, I don't have enough data to exit this, so I can't optimize your campaign correctly. You don't have to worry about that in this phase. Realistically, all you're trying to do is put out $5 and see what you can get the lowest cost per acquisition. Rule number 4, you need to fulfill the full testing timeline. Your test should last at minimum 3 days, preferably 5. But if you're strapped on cash or time or both, you can cut it down to 3 and have some pretty accurate results. Pro tip, there's a way to set up an automation, YouTube it, that you can shut down an audience after 3 days if it has not received a conversion. So you can set it up to where it says, in 3 days, if I'm spending $5 a day for every single ad set, the way I would set up this automation is if spend is greater or equal to $15, because $5 a day over 3 days is $15, and no conversions have been received, pause the ad set. Okay? So what does this look like? This is an example of a phase 2 test. As you can see on the left-hand side, that's a bunch of random different audiences. We got Zig on there, Frank Kern, Russell, lead gen agency, etc., advertising agency. Now, these are all broken down. So we chose 8 segments and then did 5 subsets of each segment to create 40 audiences that we were testing against. And if you can see in the top right, we have 10 opt-ins from Frank Kern business page admins. We have a crystal clear winning ad set that we can then take into creative testing to scale. So with that, we also have another one. Wait a minute. We have Frank Kern feeds only. Frank Kern's a winning audience. So now I know I don't need to segment those. I can combine them. Frank Kern is working for at least 2 different subsets. We'll just combine it into one audience. Then if you go underneath that, you have a bunch of 4s that go from Zig Ziglar feeds only down to Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson is just wide open. You have at least one of your subsets is just wide open. You're not doing any subsets. That's your control, right? So I already talked about it. This is the Frank Kern business page admin. Frank Kern business page admins. This is what that audience looks like. So if you've been in Facebook Business Manager and you set up a campaign before, you know what this is. We are essentially targeting Canada and the United States, ages 18 to 65, all genders, and interests that match Frank Kern and must also match Facebook business page admins. That is the top performing audience in this test. Okay? The next one here is we look at Russell Brunson males only. This is just to give you guys context. Everything is all Russell Brunson as an interest, but we're only showing it to men. Okay? That covers phase 2. You're going to want to take your top 2 to 3 winners from there, or only one if you don't have the budget to go into the next phase, which we'll talk about budgets here in a second. You don't have the budget to run more than one ad set, only take one at a time, right? Leverage what you can, but don't over-leverage yourself. Phase 3, creative testing. Like we said, we had 3A, you're testing your media. 3B, you're testing your copy and the creative components that support it, okay? Rule number 1, testing order. Media comes before copy. I cannot argue this enough. Those of you that think your headline is going to be the biggest indicator of success or failure, you're wrong. Your media will always get a click before anything else in your creative, okay? So you take the winning audience, 1 to 3 top performing audiences. If you have more, you're a lucky person, okay? If you have 1 to 3 audiences, depending on your budget, and then you're going to use that for your creative testing. This is also going to give you a second validation that the audience will perform, okay? And what you're going to do is then start with your media testing. You do not change the copy, right? You have your control. You have the ad you took into phase 2 that was performing, that got those results. Then you're going to add in image changes or video changes. Everything else stays the same. You don't change the link. You don't change the body. You don't change the headline. Nothing. All you do is you change the image. Then once you have your media tested, you take your top 2 to 3 winning media combinations, and then you test those against the control of copy. And the order you test the copy is essentially testing your media, then your headline, then your hook, then your body, and if you're feeling froggy, you can test your description. Me personally, I don't test the description, okay? Typically because most of your conversions are going to come from mobile devices and your description rarely shows. With that in mind, rule number 2, your budget must be optimized to exit the learning phase. Now this goes into what I was saying. The learning phase essentially says, the way Facebook has this algorithm set up, is you have to have 50 conversion events over a 7-day time span for Facebook to have enough data to optimize the delivery of your campaign. If it does not have that, you'll see this little yellow symbol that says learning still or something like that, whatever. You guys will know what I mean. If it shows that, you're not using enough budget or your audience isn't big enough. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be your budget. So how do you calculate what budget to use in phase 3? Your daily budget is leveraging your average cost per acquisition, and not your average cost per acquisition in phase 2, because that's going to be super cheap. Your KPI cost per acquisition. So in our benchmarks and KPIs, we saw we could spend $35 per lead. You take $35 per lead, multiply it by those 50 events, and then divide it by 7 days in a week. That's going to give your daily ad spend budget. That's your minimum, okay? It's where you need to be at minimum. And you're using ad set budget optimization. You're not in CBO at this point because you still have variables you need to test. All right? Rule number 3, give yourself the testing timeline, 3 to 5 days for each combination. The total part of this test for phase 3 should take anywhere from 15 to 25 days, depending on if you're using 3 or 5 days as your testing timeline. Pro tip, you will use this as a sandbox area for future creative testing when your scaling campaigns need creative refreshes, okay? Am I boring you guys? Getting anything out of this? Let's fire. Let's go. We're getting close to wrapping up, but I still got probably 40 more slides, so don't worry. We'll be here all day. This is an example of that same exact test that we ran against those audiences with Frank Kern. So this is one of the, I swear, there's just some days, Nico said it the other day on the bus. It's like an external source gives you the information. Somebody writes an awesome song, whatever it is. I didn't write that song, it just came to me, right? This ad just came to me, and it turned out to be one of our best performing ads for like the first 7-8 months in business. This thing performed for 7 or 8 months. How do you do that? I don't know. We got lucky. Control. We set this up as our ad of a control, and what that is essentially a screenshot of a dashboard, and we showed an arrow pointing to our average conversion rate. At that time, for that account, it was 59% or 51%, something like that. So that's our control. That's what we ran in phase 1. That's what we ran in phase 2, and that is now the control in phase 3. This is the images we tested against for test 3A. If you can see there, the first image, there was a massive spike in crypto at the time, and everybody was sharing these charts of the crypto curve in the news feed. So I was like, screw it, let's take a play on that. So then I took a screenshot of one of our clients' campaigns and saw their business performance grow up. So created a headline, got an ISA and appointment setter, systems from Conversionly. Then my business went full send, because full send was a cool thing at the time. The next one was arguably our most hated ad, but also got us the most performance. Lead generation is dead. I love it. If you guys are ever running ads and you're not pissing somebody off, you're not trying hard enough. That ad got so much hate comment. Justin called me at 11:30 one night. He's like, will you please shut that ad down? I go into the comments every single day and have at least 30 comments I have to go delete or hide. Why? What's wrong with it, man? He's like, dude, everybody, lead generation's dead, but here you are running Facebook ads. Yeah. Click on the link and you'll figure out why. They got a lot of link clicks. Our click-through rate on that ad, I think, was like 7.62%. Then the next image was Justin and I, you already saw that. And then the next one was just some random Shutterstock image, kind of drawing a correlation that did terrible, right? Can't all be winners. 3B. So in the first breakdown of this, testing hooks, I kind of mix hooks and headlines together. So we had 3 different headlines we tested. Skip the curve and go full send with an ISA today. That was back when we were using ISA terminology. Again, like I said, you're always constantly iterating on the information you're getting. This is a valuable lesson right here. We started off using ISA terminology because that's what we knew, right? If at that time, the real estate industry was doing the appointment setting stuff, and you had agentology had just come out, and they were using the terms ISA. So Justin and I were like, cool, we'll use the same terminology, right? After more market testing, we found out that nobody knew what the hell ISA stood for. Still to this day, people ask us, what is ISA? Inside sales agent, for those of you wondering. That's when we made the transition over to setter. Use terminology your audience will mesh with. The most practical way to convert leads in 2021, and the ultimate fix for your sales calendar. The second test was the body copy. Now you can see these almost look identical, but the message market match that we're testing on the left-hand side, we're using more agency-related terminology. Clients won't follow up with their leads. Clients say these leads suck. Client cancels. Been there more times than I can count for sales calls. I'm not even reading any more of it because I can't read it. It's too small. The other one, on the other side, says leads aren't converting into appointments. Been there. Countless hours spent chasing leads just to get a single appointment. I know that feeling. These are all feelings that we went through. This is everything that we had experienced in our process of growing a business. However, the left side is focusing primarily on an agency audience, whereas the right side is focusing on a service-based business that's working with this. We wanted to see which one is going to perform the best. So, what performs the best? These. The best combinations across everything were these in that test. I revived lead generation as dead later. But for this test, it was the go full send chart, because it was popping at the time. Skip the curve and go full send with an ISA today was the top winning headline. The image adjusts in an eye because it looks natural in a news feed. For those of you that are wondering, like, why the picture of these two random dudes in my news feed work better, it's because images seem more natural in your news feed. You're not seeing your friends share a picture of some Shutterstock image with quotes on it. Those are only ads. Everybody knows it. And then the copy that spoke to more of a broader audience rather than specific on agencies were the winners. So all of this went into phase 4. Pro tip, for those of you as you get into this phase, if you don't know what this is, highly recommend using it. If you go back here, and if I could zoom in on this, see the engagement on the ad in the bottom left? If all I'm doing is running testing, how the hell did I get 64 comments, 17 shares, and you can't see the number there, but we had over 400 interactions on that ad. That was in 3 weeks. How? Didn't have big budgets. How? I used this exact same ad for every single test. I didn't go create another ad with the same copy, image, etc. I used the exact same ad. In Facebook, you can use a post ID, which will reuse the exact ad itself. It's a little sneaky on how you do it, but you go to the original ad that you created, your control or whatever winning combination won, and then you click the drop down for sharing the ad. Then you scroll down to where you say see posts, you click on Facebook posts with comments, and it's going to take you to a Facebook page with that ad post. Post. Where did that accent come from? I have no clue. With that in mind, in the URL, you're going to get the post ID. And that post ID is going to be the ID in Facebook's database that relates specifically to that post. All you got to do is copy that ID, go to create your ad, click the drop down that says use existing post, click on the little hyperlink that says enter post ID, you paste it in, and then it'll automatically pull in the ad. That way it keeps building on the same engagement. There are some ad strategies I'm not going to go into grave detail in, but there are ad strategies that you can leverage to boost your performance of campaigns by focusing an ad specifically on engagement first to build up that engagement, get the views, the likes, the comments, the shares, etc., and then you pump it into a conversion campaign, and it's already got social proof. When you get into scaling, this is arguably the most controversial part of Facebook advertising and any advertising platform for that matter, CBO or ABO. Well, honestly, I can't tell you the best. I can only tell you my experience, okay? If you're scaling multiple audiences at one time, common sense says, I don't need to optimize the campaign. Or I don't optimize at the audience level, I optimize at the campaign level. However, if you only have one audience that you're running and scaling up, then you use the audience budget optimization. However, if you're in a local or regional market, in my experience, and it may be different for our media buyers specifically, or any of you, ad budget optimization tends to perform better. Whereas if you use lookalike stacks, so essentially you're stacking your lookalike audiences of those who opted in, clicked on my Facebook page, clicked on an ad, booked appointments, but I don't want people that are sales in that audience. That would be a stack. Tend to perform better in campaign budget optimization. How you apply your budgets for scaling is the same thing. You can use the same budget formula that you used for phase 3 when you're using your audience budget optimization, and then you can incrementally increase that. In the bottom it says rule number 4, never increase your budgets by more than 25% over a 3 to 5 day time span. You increase too much, you're going to drastically increase your reach with that ad, and it's going to pump, and you could potentially tank the entire campaign, all the momentum you started building. So never increase by more than 25% at a time. If you can increase and take a little bit more of a longer road, I would even increase at a lower rate. if I were you. Rule number for campaign budget optimization, it's the same formula as your ad budget optimization. However, you multiply that value by the number of audiences that you're putting in that campaign. So if you're running 3 audiences and your average daily budget for the phase 3 was $100 a day, and in your scaling campaign, you're taking 3 audiences and putting in that campaign budget will now be $300 because you've got to optimize all 3 of those audiences. Rule number 3, use your phase 3 audience sandbox for creative testing. Essentially, you're leveraging that as a testing zone. However, there is a caveat to it. Do not test creative for the wrong audiences. You should only use the audiences that you're going to put new creative into in phase 3. So, do you guys understand what I'm saying right there? Okay, I confused the shit out of everybody. So in phase 3, what we talked about is you are using the control from phase 2. You're winning audiences that you took in phase 2. You're testing those in phase 3. So that would be like the Frank Kern business page admin, right? When you go into phase 4, you start running those ads, you're scaling them up, and then in 3 months you see that your click-through rate tanks, your cost per lead spikes, and you need new creative. You don't go test new creative in Russell Brunson's ad set in the phase 3 campaign. You test it in the Frank Kern ad set. Okay? Use the correlated audience that you originally tested in for your sandbox. Retargeting ad structures. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to burn through this because I've already kind of touched on this. The 2 biggest retargeting audiences that you should have set up should be leads that are not yet appointments, and then appointments that are not yet sales. Okay? The creative that you want to use for leads, not appointments, is going to be testimonials, case studies, things that build authority and trust in your offer, okay? If you don't have either of those, work very diligently to get them. You're going to redirect the traffic from those retargeting campaigns to either your VSL page or your booking page. You can test both, see what performs better. We typically just send them to the booking page. The platforms that we use for retargeting are AdRoll. Who knows what AdRoll is? Cool, a couple of you. AdRoll is essentially a display retargeting. Google's display network covers like 36% of the internet. AdRoll covers the rest. So AdRoll is a super cheap. I think even today we spend over $100,000 a month on advertising. Our AdRoll spends probably $300, right? It's super cheap. Google Display, Google Discover, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All different platforms that we retarget people as they opt in but are not yet an appointment. Retargeting appointments, not sales. Your value add content. So these are people that went on to book an appointment. They have not yet converted. So you want to showcase authority-driven content. So if we know one of the most common objections that somebody has when they get on the sales call with our team is, I don't have time for this. I don't want to be in another course. So we go create a content video throwing rocks at other course creators. Don't take another course. Our team does the work for you. All you got to do is know how it operates. We had an analogy at one point where what we do is we essentially build you the Ferrari, then teach you how to drive it, right? That's a good retargeting ad because it drives on the content that handles the objection. You can leverage testimonials, and you're going to want to redirect that traffic if you're redirecting it anywhere. Some people will use engagement campaigns or video view campaigns for these. If you're driving any traffic anywhere, do it to your case studies page, your testimonials page, your reviews page, or free resources like a blog, etc. The platforms we use for those, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Typically, you want that to be video content because what we're aiming for at appointments, not sales, is that 7-hour rule. We want to prime them with 7 hours of content before they get on a sales call with our sales rep. Increases the probability that we'll have a one-call close.
If you enjoyed that, press here for the full unedited version of this episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Adios.